Let's talk about conscious relating and conscious relationships. I want to talk about these things as I refer to them when I speak, and I want to define them. And before we define conscious relating and conscious relationship, let's define unconscious relating and unconscious relationships. So, and I'm gonna get a little, I use a little science here. Neuroscience, I think they call it. People that study the brain. But we, those people, or we, identified that we have three brains, and they refer to them as the reptilian, limbic, and neocortex. Another way to look at them is the animal brain, the emotional brain, and the thinking brain, the awareness brain. So it's funny because we are on top of the food chain. How do we become there on top of the food chain? Because of our conscious awareness, our ability to think, our ability to plan for the future, our ability to use our neocortex, our ability to use our frontal lobe. And that's kind of like the kind of consciousness. We can argue that we make things consciously. The problem with unconsciousness is kind of where you're acting out of your animal self, and your animal self is real and valid, and you shouldn't be ignoring it. We don't pretend that we're not also animals. That will not. I'm not suggesting that. But how do we get past that? How do we evolve past that? Right? Like your animal brain, for example, as a man, might tell you to go spread your seed everywhere, but a more evolved part of you is like, well, that's not what I want to do with my life. That's not a healthy way to live life. So men spend their life doing that and chasing that. Um, and I've met those men, and they're not particularly happy. So then, so a lot of us act more like animals than animals do. So what is the reptilian brain? Reptilian brain, first of all, make sure that things are keeping you alive. But in terms of what we're talking about here, is it animals have four things that they worry about: sleep, rest, food, uh, secretion, like pooping and peeing, and reproduction, sex. So these are the four things, and they don't go past these four things. That's kind of where their life ends. And how many people live in that? How many people that's where their life ends too, and then they go past that? Um, so and then, but what's interesting about that is how much of that is unconscious, right? If you're consciously choosing, oh, I'm just gonna consciously choose, and then you can ask yourself, am I really consciously choosing, or that's the programming I'm running? Right? That's why I say question everything. The more you question stuff, the more liberation you're gonna find, that those things will have less grip on you. The first place to start getting conscious is to start looking and working with these things. So when you start looking and working with these things, you're gonna start to find out a lot of freedom. So how do we start looking at these things? So let's look at the most basic thing, food. And let's look at most basic thing like sleep. But let's just stick with food. So food, how often there's food in front of you and you're not thinking, so how many people, at the office or whatever they are, there's a snack and they're just like thinking, eating without thinking. It's in front of you, you're putting it in your mouth. So one, that's just you're just on autopilot. You're not even thinking. And there's food, and you put stuffing it in your mouth. Um, and and also, is this good for you? Is this what you need right now? Is this the type of food you should be eating? Is this food good for you? So much of this processed food, it's so high in these in stuff that make you are like straight up addicting, right? Like sugar is more addicting than anything else. So how much often you put sugar stuff in your mouth that you don't think about that? So, and before you go into thinking what's good for me and what's not good for me, before you get stuck in the omnivore's dilemma, where here in the West we're struggling with, every day there's a new fad, there's a new diet, there's vegan diets, there's omnivore diet, no omnivore, but there's a vegan diet, and then there's like all meat diet, a carnivore diet, and then there is it, like all kinds of things in between. But in terms of something that's not diet, because it doesn't talk about what you eat, is intermittent fasting. So fasting is fascinating because you start to actually forces you to question what you're eating, how much you're eating, and when you're eating it. So if you fast for 3 days, or if you fast for 5 days, what you're gonna find out that what's not so hard about fasting is not the hunger. You only gonna be hungry the second day, and then hunger goes away pretty fast. But the psychological and the emotional process you're gonna have to go through to to face all these impulses, all this unconsciousness comes to the surface, right? So this unawareness starts to become very aware, because now all of a sudden you're not allowed to do this. Oh, it's in front of me, I'm going to put it in my mouth. What's the hardest thing about fasting is like, oh, all of a sudden you crave your cravings. After a while they go away too, but you're maybe not the first time you do a 5 day fast, but the second, the third time it becomes easier, and you're like, you're like, oh, I want pizza so bad right now. And then it has to question the past when you chose to have pizza, when you thought you consciously, oh, what am I going to have for dinner? Is the reptilian brain or whatever, the programming, the what you've programmed yourself, pizza, pizza, and then it's like in the back, on the unconscious, it's like pizza, 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 and then you start having pizza. Um, so so then the moment you stop, and and you're gonna start to bring more consciousness to this. So right, this is the first level, from unconsciousness to consciousness. Really powerful, because those are the hardest. Dealing with our reptilian bread is like brain is the hardest. Um, so, and I love this quote from Carl Jung: until you make the subconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So right, like my subconscious is ruling my life. It's telling me pizza, 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 and I think like, oh, I want pizza. I think I want pizza. It's like I'm conscious awareness. I'm choosing pizza, but the moment I fast for 5 days and the brain goes pizza, 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 but me consciously have chosen not to eat for 5 days. Oh, now I'm making the unconscious conscious. You see what I'm saying? So it's a very black and white example to say what's conscious. So then we go back to the limbic brain, or the emotional brain. So how much programming is happening there that it's on the back? That you should be with this kind of person, that marriage is a good thing or marriage is a bad thing, that you should be you should marry this kind of this kind of person's good, that kind of person's good. You have so many programmings, from romanticism to Hollywood to Walt Disney to your community, to your background, to your culture, to your religion, to your community, right? Like, to give you an example, I live in the Bay Area, and here everyone is, sexually free, and everyone is like into polyamorous relationship and open relationships and all this, and so what's taboo here is having a monogamous relationship. How many people are probably going into polyamorous relationship, not because that's what their truth is. That's not what they're consciously choosing, but the programming around them, that environment, is telling them that that's what they should choose. So, like how much of a suffer this programming these days. You have feminism and toxic masculinity, and men should be a certain way, women should be a certain way, and relating. We have the what do they call it, nuclear families, and we have like all this in everyday new programming. Now we have these genders, and I don't know what a woman is, I don't know what a man is, and it's just you're constantly bombarded with different messages. I mean, even right now, you're listening to this video, maybe what you're hearing is bringing even more confusion. Well, wait, so should I question all that? So first of all, yes, question everything. Question everything I say. Don't believe anything I say. Try it out for yourself. Try fasting for 5 days and see if pizza is your devil, or is it chocolate chip cookie, or is it what is your autopilot, where you can bring the subconscious, the subconscious to the conscious, right? So we can start to have more conscious, to start showing up more consciously, and from there we can have conscious relationship and conscious relating. You with me so far? um, so so then we get in a relationship, and then this whole programming starts to kick in. Boom. And this is how it should be, this is how you should be, this is, and then we don't, and we assume, because it's okay, now we're here, now it should be this way. But then it's not this way. We start to suffer, we start to get angry, we start to have to resent our partner. So how many people sit down and stop and like, well, why are you getting married? What's the reason you want to get married? A lot of people don't have these conversations. uh, I was really clear why I was getting married, but I didn't sit down and have these conversations with my wife. I felt because I was clear, I assumed that she was clear too. I assumed that she was on the same page as me. Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't, but we didn't sit down and have a conscious conversation. Sex, let's just to give you, just to make my point here. Most people, it's a lot easier for most people to have sex than to talk about sex, especially with their intimate partner. Why is that? Because to talk about sex, you have to bring it to the frontal lobe, and you have to bring it to your awareness, and you have to bring it to your consciousness, and you have to look at it, and you have to explore it, and you have to say stuff about it, and you have to say what you want, which most people don't even know what they want, don't know what they like, and even like the things they like, how much of that is programming, how much you might actually enjoy that that you believe it's a taboo, so you won't even cross your mind for you to even try that, but you might actually love it if you tried it, right? What if your partner asks you about that taboo, like, oh, what if we did this one thing? And you're like, oh, no, 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 no. Okay, I knew I shouldn't have married you, right? Like, you fucking creep. Um, right? But because you have some story that that's bad or that that's good. Uh, so, again, isn't that funny? Like, it's a lot easier. People have sex every day. Um, I mean, I'm not saying couples have sex every day. A lot of couples end up not having sex because of these things. Um, so many sexless relationships and marriages. Um, so a lot of but people do have sex, right? Uh, but they don't talk about sex. And I know the pain of that, and I know what that costs. And then there's another thing. A lot of people want your partner to talk about sex. You want them to be vulnerable and to share about sex, but we're not willing to do it, right? Um, so this is what I mean by conscious and unconscious. So conscious relating is when you question everything, and when you choose, you have to choose to question the programming and to be willing to rewrite the program. So a lot of this, we look at the brain as a computer a lot, because there's this unconscious programming, like a computer program that runs in the background that we don't question. A lot of people don't change and transform their lives because they only work with the frontal lobe, with the neurocortex, and that's not going to do the work, because your subconscious is ruling you and you're calling it fate. So how do you start changing the subconscious? So um, again, just like with the eating, like you don't eat for 5 days, all of a sudden it becomes really clear to you. And one place is, people talk about habits. Habits is a way where you are reprogramming yourself. Now, some people if you do something for 21 days, becomes a habit. If you do something for 30 days, becomes a habit. If you do something for, some people say it takes 66 days actually. So I don't know what the right number is, but when you do something over a period of time and you repeat it, it starts to become a part of you, starts to become natural. So let's say if you do intermittent fasting, might be hard for a week, might be hard for 2 weeks, and then you don't even think about it. You don't even think about food until the hour you've decided you're gonna eat. So if you're gonna be fasting for 16 hours, some people fast 18 hours, but some people have one meal a day. But like if you're fasting, then it just becomes, you program yourself. You don't even think about food until that hour. If you're fasting between 12 and 8, you're eating food between 12 and 8, for example, that's a popular time, or between 12 and 6. After a few weeks, you don't even get hungry until 12. Like, oh, food, what? Oh, all of a sudden at 12, your stomach starts growling. You know exactly what time it is, because at 12 o'clock, your stomach starts growling. So you've kind of programmed yourself, and the body took that on. If you have a hard time waking up early, I have a hard time waking up early. If you wake up at 5 in the morning, if you wake up at 5 in the morning for a few weeks, then you're automatically going to start waking up at 5 in the morning without an alarm clock, without anything, right? So, but this is dangerous, because we continue to evolve, and hopefully you continue to evolve, and you don't set up. So constantly question everything. So even question that itself. So because and I know it's a struggle. It's a program. It's so you're rewriting the software. Maybe you upgraded the software to something new, but now you're still not living consciously. You're living unconsciously. What consciousness is choosing to take 5 days to fast and sticking to it. That's you living consciously. Unconsciously is you eating the snack in front of you without thinking about it. But so now if you rewrote the script, now you evolve. Now it's a different season, maybe, like now maybe that was a good, like juicing, for example. It's great to do during summer. It's not so great during the winter. Where you live, who you live with, you live with someone else, like keep living consciously. So it means like, oh, now you wrote the software, so now don't go back to being a victim to the new software. You constantly want to upgrade the software. You constantly want to create new habits. You constantly want to try new things, to expand new things. That's how the brain works. The most fascinating thing about the body, the human body, there isn't another machine on this planet that works like the human body, is the more you use it, the better and stronger it becomes. Like most other machines, you use the more you use them, they die over time. I mean, the human body dies over time, but um, you have to use it, right? Like if you want to build muscle, you have to use that muscle. If you want to build your consciousness, you have to be using it. You have to wake up, and you have to go towards that. So one way to think about that is go towards embrace the pain. Go towards that which you don't want to do. You want pizza? Don't have pizza, right? Have something else instead. And then you start practicing being more conscious. So to define it very simply, what conscious relating, conscious relationship is when you coming a choice. You make a choice and you drop the programming that you've gotten from mommy and daddy, from Walt Disney, from Hollywood, from your community, from your religion, that how a marriage should be, how things should be. Drop them and check in what's true for you. Check in what is the truth, and never stop questioning it. And then consciously create together, come with your partner, consciously create the relationship you want. Sit down, write about it, talk about it. Be like, okay, we want to have this kind of relating. We want to have this kind of sex. We want to have this kind of interactions. We want to have, when we go to a party, how are we going to be? We're going to go, what time we're going to go home? Like I got to wake up tomorrow. Well, I want to stay, be with my friends. Have adult conversations and be like, okay, well, I really want to come home, make love to you, and snuggle with you. But no, I want to stay with my friends until later. I know you got to wake up early next day. So, like, have that conversation instead of like both of you either giving up your preference to satisfy your partner, but then you're secretly harboring resentment and resenting them for it and not really satisfying them, just making their, if one of the partners stays to the party late to satisfy their partner, they resent them and they make their time there miserable. If the other one comes home to snuggle and make love, they won't even do that, and they'll come and resent them and find reasons, make their time miserable. That's unconscious relating, right? But if you're like, okay, well, we can both give up our preferences. I'll give up my preference, and I'll go home, and you stay here, and I'll honor your preference, right? Or how about I'll stay with you and I'll make the best love I've ever made to you tomorrow night. Like, oh, okay, I could do that. So from just an evening event, you can do that consciously or you can do that unconsciously. First, you gotta get clear about what you want. Second, we have to find the guts to communicate it. So first of all, good luck figuring out what you want. I mean, that is hard on its own. Just to check in, even for that one evening, like what is it you all want, to be able to know it, to embody it, and to speak it. And then for your partner to be able to even hear you. Oh my God, that is, you guys, if you're having that kind of relationship relating, you are ahead of the curve, right? So I know I want to stay late with my friends, or I want to come home early and be with you. Just to even check in with myself, like, oh, that is what I want. That is my truth. To have the guts to communicate, to be able to hear my partners know if they don't want that, to not get defensive anywhere along this way, and to be able to give my partner what they want. So you see what I mean by conscious relating? Conscious relating is you don't rely on the instinct. We talk about instinct. We talk about how it should be. This is what a marriage should be. I don't know, is that what a marriage should be? Did you guys sit down and talk with each other and be like, what is a conscious relationship should be? That way you and I defined it. Not the way this guy defined it. Not the way Christian defines it, but the way you and I define it. Not the way the new guru defines it, but how you and I sit down and talk about it and define it for ourselves. That's conscious relating. If there was a couple that we look up to, imaginary couple, and we call this couple conscious couple, we want to be like them, what they should be like. Let's paint our own movie. Let's make our own, caricatures and look up to them and become them. Let's make our own Walt Disney cartoon of the perfect couple and let's become them. And that couple will be different for that couple and be different for that couple and be different for this couple. That's conscious relating. When someone's giving you feedback, don't get defensive. Be like, ooh. First of all, be aware, and that's what I'm saying, going towards the pain. I don't want to hear this. No, hearing this doesn't feel good. I don't want to hear it. Like, let me hear this. Let's go towards the pain. That's conscious relating. When, letting the impulses, the instincts, sometimes often in a relationship, like, follow your instincts. It's horrible advice. Never follow your instincts. Animals follow their instincts. Follow your conscious awareness. Make a conscious choice. That's you being a human. That's what distinguishes you from an animal that follows its instincts, right? So your instincts are just deeper programming. Don't ever follow your instincts. Follow your conscious mind. Look at this objectively. Talk about it. Decide what would it take. We decide as a couple we should be having sex at least 2 times a week, every week. And then the consciousness here becomes like, are we gonna find a way to make it happen? Are we gonna blame the other person? Or we ourselves actually like, it's already Saturday, we haven't done it, we have 2 days left of the week. Should we do it? Oh, no, I don't, I'm not in the mood. Well, fucking get in the mood. Both of you. But that's not spontaneous. That's not sexy. I have to, it's Tuesday, we should do sex. Well, is it better to go 6 months without having sex? A lot of times conscious, people also confuse, and I could keep going and going here, but a lot of people confuse consciousness with manipulation, right? Like if I've consciously decided I'm going to come home and seduce my wife and have sex with her, which I didn't do nearly as much as I should have. Or if I did make that decision, I come home and she greets me in a certain way that was negative, and I was like, fuck that, I'm not seducing her, right? Was that conscious or that unconscious? That was just me reactionary. Am I being responsible? Responsibility. Responsibility is the most conscious things you can do. And responsibility means your ability to respond. So I've consciously decided to come home and seduce my wife. She reacts in a way that I don't appreciate, and I'm reactive, like, oh, fuck this. Or I might respond like, oh, she acted in a way I don't like. Am I gonna respond to this, or am I gonna react to this? So again, deep subject, so we're gonna explore. I'm gonna talk a lot more about these things, and when I refer to conscious relating. So this whole idea, this whole conversation, this whole interactions we're having here, it's about conscious relating and conscious relationship. Stepping outside of the norm, stepping outside of the programming and creating something differently, doing something differently, relating differently, relating in a way that works for you and your partner. So I could keep giving you millions of examples of conscious versus unconscious, but you get the idea. It's when you are reactive versus responsive. Very simple. If you're reacting, you're unconscious. You're letting the impulses. So again, these are hard. And a lot of people sit and have these conversations, make those decisions, but they don't follow through on them. Like, let's say we decided we're gonna have sex minimum 2 times a week. We sat down, we had an adult conversation, we decided to do it. And then it's like, oh, I'm not in the mood, but this is not romantic, but it's not hot, but this is not sexy. Get in the mood. Both of you do what it takes. Don't blame the other person. Are you doing it? Well, I want her to seduce me. Well, why, when I came home, she wasn't in her lingerie, and we'll talk about seduction at some point. But, um, women want one thing, the men want another thing. They're not giving it to each other. Why? Because both feel entitled or unconscious. Both feel like they have the right to want what they want, and on and on and on. I'm gonna leave you with this. Just final definition. Conscious relating is the difference between your ability to respond and create together the relationship you want versus being reactionary, impulsive, instinctual, and just running the programming in the background. Okay, I hope you enjoy this. Till the next time, much love.